A lot of people ask me how I got together with Penn and Teller, and there's one guy that really made it happen. Mike Close, one of the greatest magicians in the world, appropriately named Close because he's a great close-up magician, introduced me to Penn, brought him over to see me play when I was working at the Eiffel Tower here in Las Vegas, and that's how it all started. So we talk about that, and we talk about a lot of things. He's a great guy, really interesting. He has incredible insights in magic and in music. He's a wonderful jazz pianist. And I really enjoyed talking with Mike Close, and I hope you like listening to him on The Stereo Image. About now. And welcome to this week's edition of The Stereo Image. I am thrilled and excited to have my dear friend Mike Close on today because he is one of the guys that I thought of when I came up with the idea to do this podcast. I want to talk to interesting people that aren't necessarily musicians first, although in this case, Mike is a great jazz pianist, but also a world-famous magician. And we wanted to talk about all the kind of stuff that you've dealt with music and magic in your whole long, illustrious career.
This is a new meaning of the word illustrious, which I am not familiar with, but I'll have to. Yeah.
Well, I know that when
it's like the new meaning of obliterated. It's such
exactly. It's when we first met, and you brought Penn along with you to see me play. Shortly thereafter, we went over to the Monte Carlo to see you perform, and I was, of course, blown away because, you mentioned in passing Harry Reiser, but I remember reading a couple of magic books when I was a young kid, and just being, I guess the word is crushed by the amount of work that I saw that it would take to learn one decent card trick. And I thought, this is beyond me. I can't, I'm too busy trying to learn what an A minor 7 flat 5 chord is. And so I was always, blown away by magicians and magic, less so stage magic, more card manipulation and close-up stuff. But let's start by talking about, we'll get on to when we met, when Mike met Mike later on. But talk to us about how you got started in Indianapolis.
Music for me started a little bit earlier than magic. My mother was a musician. She was she did as well as she possibly could. She had very little formal training, but she did play the piano, and I remember hearing her play the piano as a kid. There's a picture of me sitting at a piano when I was probably 3 or 4 years old, but do not get the wrong idea about that. There was nothing going on that anybody would be interested in. I used to love listening to music, and early on, I don't remember when I bought my first Oscar Peterson album, but I think it may well have been the Canadiana Suite album.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And my frustration with it was I thought it was just fantastic. I mean, just unbelievable as a kid, but I couldn't understand it. I just had no idea how what he was playing related to anything else that was going on. I mean, being able to absorb that kind of thing. But I was really interested in how music worked. And because I don't have great ears, I did a lot of, instead of reading music this way, at the same time, I'd read it this way, and understood, chord functions. And I could look at notes and understand what the chord was that was going, do you know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
So we had a very old upright piano in our house, and I played on that for years and years. And I'm amazed I accomplished anything because it was damn near impossible to get any music out of this old piece. And we lived in a little town. I grew up in a little town from about sixth grade on, about 25 miles northwest of Indianapolis, a little town called Lebanon, Indiana. And there were some, very nice blue-haired lady piano teachers there.
Sure.
But lessons with them, I just couldn't stick with it because it wasn't what I wanted to know. I mean, I understand now, of course, the necessity for, etudes and scales and
Right.
that kind of practice. But it would have been more effective if I could have related that kind of training to the kind of information that I wanted to know. And so almost all of it I got from books and reading and studying things. So that's sort of how my music interest got started. And then when I was about 6 years old, we moved around a lot in my early life. My dad was in industry. So, when your father works in industry, he takes this job, then he takes
Sure.
So I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but then we moved to the Chicago area. And then we moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And there was a magic shop in Fort Wayne, Indiana, owned by a fellow named Dick Stoner. And Dick is still around. I think he's 97 or 98.
Wow.
So it's really astonishing. And Dick was a fantastic ethical magic dealer because he was, he never sold me anything that was beyond my ability to learn.
Right.
I was really fascinated by it. And I remember getting some tricks. I think maybe when I was in kindergarten, or I saw him perform. He performed at my school, and I think I was in kindergarten or first grade. It's amazing. I still remember several of the tricks and several of the jokes that he did. It was,
wow.
It was amazing. But anyway, he was in Fort Wayne, and so I would buy tricks. And we did not have a lot of money. And so from about, first grade to sixth grade, in the summer, just before sixth grade, we moved from Lebanon. We moved down to central Indiana to Lebanon. And then there were no magicians around that I knew of. So it occurred to me pretty early on that I could buy a magic trick, one trick for $10, or I could buy a deck of cards for 50 cents and a book of card tricks for $10, and I'd have 60 tricks.
Right.
And since I had some digital dexterity from the keyboard, that's how I learned magic, from books.
Wow.
Well, my entire life has been mostly trying to figure it out for myself. And so I became very book knowledgeable in both of those fields, both on, trying to understand jazz. But there's an awful lot in books, obviously, that you don't know, that you don't understand, that isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So magic wise, for me, I practiced and I got better and better and better. And then when I went to Purdue University for 2 years as a mathematics major in an effort to make my dad happy because he was an engineer. We stayed, by the way, in the Lebanon area because he shifted from industry to teaching at the Purdue University campus in Indianapolis. And
Okay.
I believe he actually became the last person on earth to be made a full professor, only having a bachelor's degree,
Wow.
because of the real life experience that he brought to his teaching.
Right.
So, he taught in the mechanical engineering technology, department. So we stayed put in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Purdue for a couple of years and decided I love math, but I don't have the instinctive, intuitive insight that really good mathematicians have,
Right.
where they look at something and they see what the answer to that problem, at least they see a pathway to the answer. Me, I look at, I went into the advanced honors math program, and by my sophomore year, I was hopelessly lost. There was no way I was going to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I had a professor, and I said to him, look, I know I'm doing miserably in your class. I know I am doing miserably in your class, but I'm transferring to Butler University in Indianapolis to study music. So I just wanted you to know that maybe you can give me a little break on the grade. And he said, I will. He says, I'm going to give you a B minus minus for the course. He says, I don't want to penalize you for attempting to do something difficult. He says, by the way, I'm an amateur musician. I play in a recorder quartet with 3 other of the math instructors in the department. And he said, you know what happens when 4 math instructors get together to play recorder quartets? I said, no. And he took this textbook off the shelf. And it was the book that they wrote instead of actually learning to play recorder thing.
Wow.
So after I moved back to Indianapolis and went to school back in Indianapolis, shortly thereafter, I discovered that there was a magic club in Lafayette. I could have gone to it every week while I was at Purdue. I didn't know it existed.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started to go up and hang with these guys. And then I found out there was a magic club in Indianapolis. I didn't know that. So I went there and I'd hang out some with the guys, and they saw me do some card tricks. And they said, "Oh, you're pretty good. You should be Harry Reiser." Well, I knew the name because of the book I had read. He's mentioned in several of them, but I thought he lived in Chicago. And he actually did live in Chicago, but he had moved to Indianapolis. So it was very nice. I called him one night and explained who I was, and he invited me over, and we had a great time. But anyway, he was the one who gave me what was missing from the books. He gave me, in the same way that, you could go to Copley Plaza and sit and watch Dave McKenna play every night. You're going to learn a lot more watching Dave McKenna play than you are by
reading a book about Dave McKenna.
Book on, the 15 different changes for body and soul. So that was a big turning point for me. And Harry had instilled in me sort of a philosophical approach, an aesthetic approach to doing magic. And through his connection, then I was able to meet many, many other really good magicians. One of whom was our dear friend, Johnny Thompson, who was also, Harry was also a mentor to Johnny when they both lived in Chicago. Harry's a few years older than Johnny, not that much older. But that's how I met Johnny Thompson. In 1976, I met Johnny.
No kidding.
He and Pam were driving from the West Coast to the East Coast. And it was actually for the very first gig they ever did together as Thompsonian Company.
In 1976?
1976, yeah.
Wow.
So that was how the magic thing happened. The music thing, I was playing gigs in high school. I was playing, I played solo piano at a restaurant in town, on weekends, that kind of thing. Not particularly well, in retrospect. I played with some wedding reception bands and those kind of things, when that kind of music was still being used for those kind of performances. When I started to, look, I'm a jazz piano player. I do close-up magic. If I had minored in Sanskrit, I would have had the trifecta of unemployability. So I missed that by one thing. But that was sort of my development into all that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I mean, you were a serious enough musician to study it in college. You know what I mean?
I have a master's degree in music theory and composition.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't a piano major because I really did not have the training to have been a piano major, really. The thing that sort of is unfortunate, I mean, you look back on your life and you go, well, I wish that had been a little bit different. But the very first time that I had a decent piano to practice on was when I started my graduate work, because I was a teaching assistant and I was in the same office as the music theory guy I was working with. And he had grand pianos at his, how the guys, kind of stuff. So I actually could play on an instrument that had enough resistance. I mean, I don't know if you ever you must have done this in your experience, but if you only practice on a piano that has a really light action,
yes,
you go into your piano lesson and your piano teacher has a Steinway, running with weights on your ankles.
And I will tell you, I had a Yamaha C6 in the 1990s, and it was a beautiful action and a great piano. And over the years, and I believe this is my own theory, and I'm making it up. So,
Cool.
but it seems like over the years, Yamaha has lightened their action considerably. And when I moved to Vegas in '99, and I went to the Yamaha dealer out here, and I played a brand new C7, it was like the keys felt like they were made out of balsa wood.
Oh, wow.
There was no, you know what I mean? And I believe I think that they're deliberately doing that because kids never learn to play a real instrument anymore. They learn on keyboards.
Sure.
And they never get the muscles in their hands to properly, and I mean, yeah, I prefer a heavy action. I mean, the Kwai I have at my house it's been doctored to have the perfect action for me.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I like. But I know, I'm pretty sure you're the same way. You like an action that you can dig into and you can get something out of and feel.
I have the opportunity to work with that instrument over time because let's face it, it's a strength thing. I mean, you're really building strength. And if the piano you're working on doesn't provide that resistance to build that strength,
right,
it's so hard. You can't play with any kind of speed at all because your fingers just don't have the strength to do it.
Yeah, and also to get a touch and a sound. You know what I mean? That you want to bring to. I mean, I would hear Dave play on a Steinway, and I would hear Dave play on a Spinet, and it still sounded like him. He could get, but that's all muscles. That's all musculature in your band. But,
so when I was in college, the fact that I had a lot of book learning as far as music theory goes before I even got there, I remember I don't remember if this was during my graduate years or not, but I don't think it was. Might have been junior or senior year. You had like a piano class, and it was like a 2 piano thing. So basically it was a sight reading class. So you go in and you'd sight read things with another person. And most of the time I was paired up with piano majors, and I could play them under the table simply because they read music like this and I read music like this. And if you read music like this, I may not have hit the right notes, but I didn't hit any wrong notes. You see what I mean? So I could always keep the music going, even if I wasn't catching everything that I needed to catch.
Right.
While I was at Butler, I met a fellow named Michael Bryant. I met him in 1972 in the first music theory class I went into, and he and I have been best friends ever since. We had a music production company after I got out of school, and we did a lot of jingle work in town. And as I played more and more, I finally was playing a gig at the Airport Holiday Inn, of all places, with a trio backing up sort of a lounge lizard singer named Danny Mack was this guy's name. And Danny was great in many ways because Danny was the type of singer, band leader, that if the crowd was getting into it, then we didn't take a break. If the crowd was going and they were really digging it, so we'd play an hour and a half set or something like that. Right. So that was really great for gaining stamina. And especially for me, since before I worked with him, I was mainly focused on jazz repertoire, and he was more in the pop rock kind of thing. So it gave me a lot of exposure up for those kind of styles. And one night, there were 2 guys in the bar who were music producers. And they did things for a guy named Bill Gaither. I don't know if you ever know that name, but Bill Gaither is a gospel. I don't know if Bill's even still around. He might still be around. But he had a studio in a little city called Alexandria, Indiana, which was about 45 minutes northeast from Indianapolis. And it was called Pinewood at the time. I think it might have been called. It's called Gaither Studios now, perhaps. But anyway, they heard me play. And because I could cover all these styles, they said, "How's your sight reading?" And I said, "Well, it's very good. I'm a good sight reader." Right. The next session we do, we're going to use you on it. And I said, well, that's great. And what I was unaware of was how much music was being recorded in Indianapolis. for several reasons. The main one being that between the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra and Indiana University, there were really top-notch musicians in the area who were a hell of a lot cheaper than Chicago, LA, or New York.
Right.
And so I was able to get into the recording aspect of things, which I enjoyed very much. And one of the things they did at this Gaither Studios was they would do custom gospel albums. So a singer or a trio or a quartet, whatever, they'd put their 12 songs together. They'd send them to a producer. And generally for me, it was a very nice fellow named Roger Bird. And Roger would come up, he'd listen to it and he'd write kind of an arrangement, sketch out an arrangement.
Right.
And then there was a core group of four of us who would come in and be the rhythm section. A great guitar player named Sandy Williams, amazing drummer named Dane Clark, who became John Mellencamp's drummer.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and
sure.
A bass player named Randy Melson, another fellow named Steve Dokken I worked with a lot. Steve was Henry Mancini's bass player when Mancini played east of the Rockies. He would use Steve, an extraordinary musician. And so I probably played on, 500 of those.
Wow. Yeah.
And, the most satisfying thing about doing those sessions was knowing that when we finished the rhythm tracks, that was as good as that piece was ever going to sound.
Right.
So that was a bonus. So I was able to get into that kind of thing. And so that's sort of how my music career sort of floated around, never really with a goal. I was just a journeyman musician, really.
Well, yeah, but you're a fine pianist. I mean,
but now I got this thing on my thumb, so I.
Oh, that doesn't look good.
I have a trigger. I have a trigger thumb now, so it locks.
No, not good.
I'm seeing an orthopedic surgeon at the end of the month, so we'll see what's happening with that. But it's
that's not good. You use your hands.
Yes.
Now let's get to coming to Vegas.
Okay.
When did you show up in Las Vegas and why?
Okay. Well, it was the main reason was to put some miles between me and a soon-to-be ex-wife.
Mm.
That was a big reason. Did
you come here from Indianapolis?
Yes, I came here from Indianapolis. I did come here from Indianapolis.
Right, okay.
So, I knew Penn Teller, and I knew that they were working here. I knew Johnny Thompson. I knew he was in Las Vegas. So there were people that I knew. So I didn't feel like I was being someplace where I didn't know anybody. And of course, I mistakenly thought, well, geez, there's got to be a ton of work for musicians and magicians in Las Vegas. How hard could it possibly be to get in this?
They're just rolling out the red carpet.
Exactly.
What year was this?
1998, just before I met you.
Oh, yeah, I moved out here in 99.
Yeah. So I
thought you had been here. Yeah, okay.
No, not years and years. I moved out in February of 1998 is when I got to Las Vegas. So I got here and discovered almost immediately that work was really, really, really difficult to get. Extraordinarily so. And part of the reason it was difficult to get is, and I don't know how it is in Vegas now, the town has changed so much in the almost 30 years since then.
Yeah.
But, I did with the standard thing. I made a demo tape as a magician and, put my little bio and my promo material and put it in an envelope and mailed it to every entertainment director I could think of. And the problem is, those people change jobs all the time. Yeah. They don't last.
No. I want to hear more of this because then I want to tell you another thing about Vegas that shocked me coming from the Northeast. But go ahead.
I did hook up. I did meet one agent who did piano stuff. There was a friend of mine. I'm desperate for work. This is a silly story, but I can tell you this story because it's pretty funny. So I get to Las Vegas and I'm hungry for work and nothing's working out. And I talked to a buddy of mine who was a magic bartender, and he was working as a bartender, but then he had the ability to do magic. He was a good magician. And he says, I've got a friend and his girlfriend is a singer. He's a piano player, but he doesn't want to work with her just to keep peace in the family.
Right.
So, but she needs a piano player because she's playing a gig coming up very shortly at a bar called The Keys, which was on, it's probably not there anymore, but it was on East Sahara, on the other side of Las Vegas Boulevard, right? And I said, okay, great. I'm hungry for anything. So I called this lady, I forget her name, and I said, hi, Frank suggested me, and I talked to your boyfriend, and, I'm available. But here's the deal. I said, are you just doing standards? Are you just doing pretty much jazz standards? And she says, yeah. I said, send me a list, fax me. This is how old this story is.
Right.
Fax me a list of the 50 tunes you want to do and the key you do them in. Now, this was on a Monday. I said,
Right.
fax me that list and the keys you do them in, and I will put your tunes together in your keys. I will show up, and you and I will sound like we played with each other for years.
Right.
She said, okay. So she sent me the list. And, it's like with every singer, right? It's always great experience in learning, playing keys that you never play in because they never sing in standard keys. And that's fine. It's a good thing to learn. Every piano player, all you piano players at home, learn
to play in every key.
Many keys. She faxed me the list. So I get to the bar, which I did not realize was a gay bar. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just wasn't expecting it.
Sure.
That's fine.
Well, with a name like The Keys,
you wouldn't be an enthusiastic crowd because we're going to do stuff and they're going to love her. So there's pianos there. It's a grand piano. Fantastic. So I say to her, what do you want to start with? She says, let's do, how about Bye Bye Blackbird? I said, well, perfect. I play an intro. She comes in. She takes a chorus. I take a chorus. She comes back. We tag it. Life is beautiful. Okay. Everybody claps.
Yes.
The next words out of her mouth are, does anybody have any requests? Yeah. And I held up my hand. And I said, yeah, I got one. Can we stick to your goddamn list? So anyway, I only worked with her that weekend, and that was the last I worked with her. But anyway.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh,
well,
I have a box of cassette tapes that I've been digitizing. I've got a little thing to digitize now. One of them is the Dave McKenna piano jazz with Marion McPartland, which I don't think is available anywhere. And it's the one that he's really drunk.
Really drunk on? Yeah.
And he won't give her the frickin' time of day. She wants, how did you do this? How did you do that?
Yeah.
Let's just play. Let's just play, Marion. What do you want to do? Well, let's do Have You Met Miss Jones? Let's do it in B. Okay. You just be the little dick. Anyway, I'll send that to you. I'll send that to you.
Thanks. Because I've heard parts of it. I don't think I've ever owned the whole thing, but it's so funny because, he's like, hey, Mary, what do you want to do? He's more than half in the bag.
Oh yeah.
And, and then, he did it again later. He felt horrible about it.
Yeah.
But,
and I don't have the second appearance, but I have the first.
Well, I've heard that. I think I'll look. If I have it, I'll send it to you. But it's funny because, it also seems like he's trying to hit on her sort of in a weird way. And that's a great, you're looking great, Marion. It's a great. Yeah, you really played the shit out of it.
There's a lot of the word babe tossed around in that.
Babe. Yeah.
Hey, babe, let's do that, babe.
Yeah.
How you may want to leave this in? They're all dead. So how about
it's true. Who cares?
I'm back.
I did the thing with Hank O'Neill, and he said he started Chiaroscuro with Marion McPartland and Sherman Fairchild, and then it became Chiaroscuro when Marion started whatever label she started after that. And he said, "Well," I said, "Well, why did they break up? Why did you guys break up?" He said, "She wanted every record to be a Marion McPartland record."
Oh, yeah.
But anyhow, But I was going to say, since we're sort of back.
Oh, we were talking about working in Vegas. We were talking about working in Vegas.
I came to work with a singer and through an agent that had been here for years and had retired. That's a very long, involved story, but it's. Anyways, what shocked me was In Boston, there were two agencies, basically, that ran the whole town. There were 50, 60 places to play. And if you were in with Bill Curtis's agency, he handled every hotel room in Vegas, every lounge. And, he was the emperor, and same thing. There was another guy that handled a bunch of stuff, casual gigs and stuff like that. Anyhow, I come out here and these people have one room.
Right.
Like there's a guy that has one room at Bally's. There's a guy that's got one room at the Paris that he's protecting. And it was so weird. And also being spoiled rotten, where in Boston, you've got Dave McKenna playing one place, you've got Ray Santisi, you've got Bob Winder, you've got, the guys that plays with the Pops, the guy that plays. These are the guys that are working around the town.
Right.
And they're all teaching at Berkeley or New England Conservatory or Boston Conservatory, and they're supplementing their income with these gigs. Yeah. And so I was just, New York is New York. Oh, I'll go see Hilton Ruiz. Oh, I'll go see Tommy Flanagan. Oh, Junior Mance is here tonight. And I just thought that was what it was. And when I came out here and walked into like the Bellagio, and there is a guy playing the piano in the lobby that I wouldn't give lessons to.
Sure.
Wouldn't pass the test, to make it to play in the high school band that I was in.
Yeah.
And I had a shitty high school band,
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And I thought, well, how does this work? And then I found, he's the brother-in-law of the guy that books this room.
Yeah.
And it was a whole world awakening, for a new world awakening for me.
The great realization of Las Vegas. I went out. I don't remember when I first went to Vegas, but when I went out having some magic credentials, I would visit a friend of mine named Michael Skinner, who you would not have met because he died in September of '98. So it'll come out after that. But he was a wonderful magician, and he worked at the Golden Nugget in a restaurant called Lily Lang Trees. And the reason he got the gig was that Steve Wynn really liked him. I don't know if Steve saw him at the Magic Castle or wherever it was, but Skinner had this gig forever if he wanted it, basically.
Right. Sure.
Which was great for Michael because he had some medical issues and things like that. And once a year, they would send him out, maybe once or twice a year, they'd send him out to the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City, and he'd perform there. But Michael was a great jazz aficionado. He didn't play an instrument, but he loved jazz. And, we walked over to the Desert Inn one time, and, you could see jazz trios everywhere still in the 1980s.
Right.
And the fella that I saw, and I can't remember his name, but maybe you can. I think his last name was Stiles, but he used to be Sarah Vaughan's piano player. I don't know if that name rings a bell. Maybe one of your listeners can figure.
Yeah, or maybe I can look it up on the internet.
Yeah, I haven't been able to find him.
Yeah. Oh, really?
He was a wonderful, wonderful player. But this being able to get work is just ridiculous in Vegas, and it's so hard, and really was a struggle for and still is a struggle.
Yeah. No, I mean, clearly, if I didn't have the vaulted position that I have, I would have. I mean, before I was with Penn Teller, I was trying to figure out how to get out, because I didn't. I don't want to say it was. I had already gotten past the playing in a restaurant gig in New York and Boston. So it felt like a huge step backward to me to be playing in a restaurant, for not good money, and what am I doing here? And so I was really had planned to move to Chicago, which I'm now mercifully, I mean, obviously I've got the greatest gig in the world for 25 years. So I'm glad I didn't move to Chicago, because the thought of, as I say often, the thought of fighting through the traffic in a blizzard to get to O'Hare, to get to get out of Chicago to go to a gig, just makes me, frightened.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
But, but I mean, there's no work here. I mean, even the places that had pianos when I moved out here 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they no longer have them.
Well, I believe that the greatest mistake the Musicians Union in Las Vegas ever did was to go on strike.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember when that was, but it might have been late 70s or sometime in the 70s.
I think it was 81, I think, but only because I know every musician in town agrees with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What happened was that if they had gone on strike and the people who went to Las Vegas went, what do you mean this show doesn't have a live band? Well, I'm not coming to this show if it doesn't have a live band. It doesn't have a live band. I'm not coming to the show. But they didn't care.
Right.
The people who came didn't care. And once a casino owner finds out that he's not catching any flack by cutting out what is basically an enhanced customer experience, they're never going to go back and reinstate that. It's not going to happen. So well,
go ahead.
Oh, I'll tell you a quick story about trying to. I won't go into the long story about how I finally got this gig, but for a few years, when you actually saw me do magic after we met each other and you met Penn and you came to the Houdini Lounge, there was a magician there still is a magician named Lance Burt. He moved back to Kentucky, but he had a very nice gig in the Monte Carlo Hotel and doing an illusion show. And in that hotel was a bar called the Houdini Lounge. And I finally managed to get a gig in the Houdini Lounge. At the same time I was doing that, I was playing a couple nights at the gig that you used to do at the Eiffel Tower restaurant, in the restaurant Eiffel Tower. And I was trying to, expand my work and do more stuff. And I met a bartender at the Houdini Lounge, and he said, I know the guy who's the head of catering at, I think it might have been Planet Hollywood. I don't remember what hotel. Mm-hmm. I'll set up a meeting, and maybe he can get you as part of the package. So when a person comes in for a convention, they go, well, we can do this and we do this. And here we have this fantastic close-up magician who can do a cocktail party for you or whatever. So we got the meeting, and I went in and explained the pitch to the guy and everything. He looked at me, he goes, it's never going to happen. And I said, why? He says, because if the client has $2,000 extra dollars to pay for you, I'm going to sell them more shrimp.
Wow.
And I said, okay. What I do falls into the category of an enhanced experience. I'm the kind of guy that you see this and then you go back to your pals back home and you go, man, you got to go to the Houdini Lounge. This guy did stuff you've never seen before.
Right.
The problem is this: Vegas doesn't care about that at this point in time.
Well, certainly not anymore. Yeah.
It doesn't care because 3 corporations own everything. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a hotel and you didn't have a very good time there and you say, I'm never coming back to this hotel, they don't go, oh, what can we do to make it up to you?
Right.
They, fine.
Yeah.
Pick another one. Pick another hotel. The odds are 1 in 3 that we own it.
Yeah.
So what do we care? And that's the way it is. All you have to do, it just kills me to see these ads for Vegas with these beautiful people having the time of their lives. And why don't they do a commercial where they actually put a camera out on Las Vegas Boulevard and you can see what these people really look like? There's some idea what the whole Vegas thing is. So Vegas was very a very frustrating thing. But, and maybe this is the time to tell this story, I found you. You didn't find me. I found you.
No, it's true. Yeah, it's
you.
Well, so I will tell you. Yes, we'll tell this story. But
I was going to say though, you were talking about the drudgery of doing a cocktail, piano, like the Paris restaurant thing, where basically you're an accompaniment to the sound of silverware and plates, right? Going on. And what saved me in that gig was a Dave McKenna, and not Dave McKenna's style, although, I really had worked very hard because I listened to you and I listened to Dave. to try to get that solo left hand thing going, which is the main thing that I achieved during my time in playing in Vegas, was being able to do that walking thing. And, I have unfortunately, I have small hands, so the tenths are not something that I can do, with any, with any consistency. I mean, which kills me, because the thing that just reaches into my soul and goes, this is the best thing ever, is to listen to Oscar doing walking tenth things that he was able to do, and to walk them with a legato touch going between 4 and 5 and still being able to do that tenth, and I can't do that. The thing I got from Dave was the long medley, because the long medley eliminates the need to think of what song you're going to play next. And that's the heartbreaking, horrible reality of playing cocktail piano someplace, is when you stop. And what's the first thing you do, piano players listening to this, when you stop the tune? You look at your freaking watch. Am I right? I'm
sure.
Right, play, chord, stop, nothing but noise, and you go.
Oh, geez, another 45 minutes to go.
Not only did I learn a lot of tunes, but it made the time pass. So an entire set for me would be one medley. I'd play 45 minutes of Gershwin, or 45 minutes.
That saved me. I mean, I had a gig in Boston, I've talked about before, from 5 p.m. till 1 a.m. 6 nights a week of solo piano. And that, you want to talk about getting into, ideas for medleys stolen from Dave, like, an hour and a half of girls' names, and weather medleys that went on for 90 minutes of stormy weather to ill winds to, oh, wait a minute, and it just try to stream of consciousness stuff. But the thing is, the upside is, since no one's really listening to you, you can really work out stuff that you want to hear. And occasionally somebody will listen. I had 1 or 2 actual good nights at the Paris when I was there, where people sat right next to the piano and listened to me. And I had forgotten what it felt like. You know what I mean? I forgot. I mean, I mean, again, what I do now is so far removed from what I did in my 20s and 30s. That when I go, when I play the Green Mill in Chicago, it sustains me for a year, because I mean, I'm playing good music with Penn. Penn's developed into a really fine bass player. We have fun. We play great songs. I play anything I want every night of the week. People are at their phones. They're looking at their phones. 2 or 3 might pay attention. By the end of the set, we've gotten most of them into it. You know what I mean? Which is, you know what solved that? Putting up the big screens in the theater.
Oh, so they can,
because they watch us play now.
Yeah.
But for the years, or the couple years as the cell phone revolution took over, and the few years before we put the big screens in, it was all them on their little screens.
Right.
And, but once you put a bigger screen, they look at that instead.
Yeah.
So it's, but I mean, solo gigs I love for that, for the reason that you can just sort of crawl inside yourself and play and learn, and you get your chops up. I mean, your chops are never better than
as long as you challenge yourself and you just don't let yourself coast through. You always try to do that. I have 2 stories, and I put these in the joke book. But one time, a guy walked up to me with a $5 bill in his hand, and he said, "Could you play some Gershwin?" And as it happens, I was in 20 minutes into my 45-minute Gershwin medley. He walked up and said, "Could you play some Gershwin?" I'm not somebody who can talk and play. I'm not a singer, so I've never tried to sing and play. I can't do it. Right. But so I sort of get into this vamp, so the music doesn't stop. There's still something. But I said, well, this is a Gershwin song I'm playing now. I've been playing Gershwin for the last 20 minutes, and I'll be playing Gershwin for 25 more minutes. I'm in the middle of a big Gershwin medley. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, do I still have to tip you? They're like, yeah, stick the money in the jar, mofo, and walk. The other one that was on the bright side of that was I used to do a Jimmy Van Heusen medley. Jimmy Van Heusen has written just,
oh yeah,
God, some of the best songs that anybody has ever written. And so I'm doing this Jimmy Van Heusen medley. And the last song that I do with that medley is Here's That Rainy Day. So he walks up to me and he says, you're going to do Here's That Rainy Day too, aren't you? And I looked over at him and I went, what? He said, well, you are going to play Here's That Rainy Day. And I said, do you know what I'm doing? And yeah, you're playing a Jimmy Van Heusen medley. And I said, who are you and why are you in Las Vegas? Because, it's crazy.
Right.
So
it turned out it was Jimmy Van Heusen's song.
Anyway, so here's what happened. I am an Oscar Peterson huge fan of Oscar Peterson. And
yes,
I had just picked up a CD called On the Town, which is, I think that's the one it was in, the On the Town CD. It was recordings he'd done like in the 50s, but it was the first time it had been released. And I believe your pal did the lecture notes. That would have been...
Yep, liner notes. Neil Tesser.
Neil Tesser did the liner notes. And in the liner notes, he mentioned you. He mentioned this Oscar Peterson caliber piano player, Mike Jones, who is working in Las Vegas. And I thought, holy crap, an Oscar Peterson level piano player. I wonder if I can track this guy down. So I looked in various, I tried to find you by looking to see who's playing where, and those kind of, and I could. So I ended up calling the agent that I knew who booked a lot of piano players. And I said, have you ever heard of this guy, Mike Jones? And he said, oh, yeah, I know. He's playing at the restaurant at the Eiffel Tower. And I said, oh, wow, okay, great. And do you know what nights? And he sort of knew what you were going to be there. Or maybe I called the Eiffel Tower and found out what you were working. I don't remember. But anyway, I called Penn because, because the best thing about having dinner with Penn, if you go out to eat, is Penn picks up the check. And there's no way I'm going to dine at the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower with anybody other than Penn because I'm not going to pick up that check.
Right.
So I called up Penn and I said, you feel like going to dinner at the Eiffel Tower and hearing this piano player who supposedly has got Oscar Peterson chops? And he said, sure. So that's how we met you. So we had dinner there and you were playing and that's how we met.
But wait, there's more.
Okay.
You've forgotten this.
Okay.
Somehow you got my phone number and called me.
Oh, I did. Oh, that's how I found out where you were playing?
Yes. And you called me and said, I've got this Oscar Peterson CD and they talk about you as the heir apparent to Oscar Peterson. I want to hear you play. And I said, well, all of that's bullshit, but I'm playing at the worst gig of my life at this shitty restaurant that's overpriced on the strip called the Eiffel Tower. And you said, we're coming tonight. And that was a Wednesday night. I remember it well. And you showed up with Penn, who as I said, I think I met him originally maybe in a recording studio in New York in the 80s when he was maybe the voice at Comedy Central or something. I saw him in a hallway there and said, this is Penn. And he's like, yeah. And that was, but then I recognized him obviously immediately. And you two came in. This is my version. And which includes the important aspect. You got a free dinner. He bought all my CDs. He put a $100 bill on the piano and took all my CDs. And I was the happiest I had been in months because I was dying, man. I was making like $600 a week, and, after not working for almost a year and I could pay my rent. But what's really great is, so I get the gig at the Eiffel Tower after starving for almost a year. And the guy hires me and he says, when can you start? And I said, well, when do you need me? He said, well, how about Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? And he said, I said, great. And I just thought that it would be union scale, which was like $300 a night. And he comes back and he says, we can pay you $100 a night. And as much as it absolutely killed me, I was starving. I mean, I was eating off the good graces of friends at that time. I had come out to Vegas with a few bucks in the bank, and after a year had gone through it all.
Yeah.
And so But as much as my pride would not let me take the gig for $100 a night, because I was making $100 a night in 1976 when I was 14 years old, right? And so I said to him, no, I can't do it. And he said, well, we can give you $150 a night, but the owner's coming in next week, and I will explain to him that the union minimum's $300, and we'll get you up to that. And I said, well, okay, because I'm thinking in the back of my mind, even if that's bullshit, I can live off $600 a week, because the guy was only charging me $600 a week for $600 a month for rent at the time. And so I thought, well, okay, I can pay my bills. So the guy comes in the next week, who was a guy from Chicago, and fires the guy that hired me.
Oh,
and
yes, well, yeah,
and his name was Joho. He's some minor celebrity chef in Chicago. So I sit down and talk to him. I don't give a damn. So I sit down and I say, look, the union minimum is $300 for 4 hours work. And he said, well, I'm not going to pay that. I'll pull the piano out and put a salad bar in. I don't give a shit. If you want to have $150 a night, and we'll give you dinner. And I said, well, okay. So that was the mentality that I was dealing with when you and Penn came in.
Well, that the guy, it's funny because, we're both getting really old. I'm 10 years older than you. But I remember that, I took over that gig for you,
right?
From you, I should say. And I think the good guy was still there, or it was just in the transition, because I think I got to work with him at least a few times.
Well, there was a good guy there when I left. Yeah.
Yeah. When that guy got fired, guy, he didn't get fired. He left to work a restaurant in Hawaii, I think. And the new guy who came in had no interest. Here's what the first thing he did when he came into the restaurant, because he always showed up after I had started playing. His first move was to take his day timer and to throw it in the end of the piano like it was his storage.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Nice. So, I want to leave this in.
The guy that was there while I was there, and when you first took over for me, was very nice. But the guy that hired me was the guy that lasted a week.
Oh,
he was the guy that was going to, get me my $300 a night.
Yeah.
But those were, but I mean, that was, so I was excited that you would come in. And then Penn said, Penn was, unbelievably polite. You were both really complimentary, and I was very excited because I had been there with no one listening to me for, 6 months at the time. And, the most comments I got were, why don't you play some Billy Joel?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. My favorite thing was when a guy stood at the end of the piano and he said, why don't you play some Billy Joel? And I said, well, I'm in the middle of a Cole Porter medley. That's not really the kind of stuff that I play. And he looked at me and said, well, you fucking suck. And I said, well, okay, there's a difference of opinion there, but thanks. So I was not in the best mental, and my mom was dying, and it was not a good time. But Penn and you came in, and it was this bright ray of hope, But I mean, and then Penn said, well, I've got this, I'm learning to play jazz bass, and you should come over. And I got topless girls serving Diet Cokes and, Jolt Cola at the time for him. And I thought, well, this is a different world for me, I mean, and I thought to myself, I can't hang with this guy, I said, he's a multimillionaire. He's probably going out spending thousands of dollars on food and strippers. And, I don't have $50. And so I said, just to be polite, I said, well, I'm recording this album. They're coming out from New York and they're bringing up this fancy piano from California for Kauai. Why don't you come to the recording session? I invited you guys, and I never thought that either one of you would show. I was just being polite. And then sure enough, you showed up with him, and he brought like 7 people.
Yeah.
And that was, and then he said, well, we're going to, I want to have lunch with you. And I said, well, okay. And we went to the NASCAR Cafe for our first date at the Sahara to see Kevin James's show, I think.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this guy seems down to earth. He doesn't seem like he's, spending thousands of dollars on dinners and renting lavish hotel rooms.
Penn and Teller are not your typical celebrities.
No, and I had typical celebrities. I had been around a lot of them. So that's why that's why we became friends, because I said, this is a real guy. I mean, and it just worked out that way. But then we went to see you, and like I said, I was blown away because you are a fucking master. And just to talk a little bit about like the difference in putting together that thing you did at the Houdini Lounge, like playing and then switching over to talking to the customers and doing close-up at a table. I mean,
well, this was actually the Houdini Lounge was perfect gig for me. It was absolutely a gig because I could keep both of my skill sets. I'll jokingly call them skill sets in trim. And then the evening went very fast for me. I mean, I don't know how late I think I worked from 8 to 1 or something like that. I did like a 5-hour shift there. And so I would always start out at the piano, and I had table tents made so people could understand what was going on. And I thought the table tents were really clever. It said, if you'd like to see some magic, talk to the piano player. And if you have a request for a tune, ask the magician. So it all, it had that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And unlike restaurants, and I've done a lot of work doing magic in restaurants, restaurants are always on a time schedule because, the way a restaurant makes money is it rents you a table for an hour and a half. And the rent on that table is the price of the food and the drink. But a bar doesn't care how long you're there as long as you're drinking. They're not asking for constant turnover. And the Houdini Lounge wasn't like a big raucous thing. It was beautifully decorated. I thought it was dark.
Yeah.
And, they had the walls were covered with magic memorabilia. That made it look really cool. And they had a decent, not great, but at least a decent, piano there. Now, when I started, because I had not achieved the level of competence with my left hand that I needed to do solo stuff, I was actually using a program called Band in a Box on my left.
I remember that. Yeah.
And playing it through the speaker. So it sounded like I was playing with a trio. Now, you might think that's good, bad, or indifferent, but I'll tell you what's great about it is I'm playing with a freaking metronome. Every single playing to a click. And one of the dangers of playing solo piano, we all know this, is your time can get really wanky if you're not careful. And that really, not only was I getting good, keeping my chops in trim, but my time stayed in trim as well. And then what I would do is if somebody wanted to see magic, or if I wanted to take a little respite from the piano, I'd walk up and I'd ask people if they'd like, the hard part about doing table magic is breaking that ice and intruding.
Right.
But people would come. And the other benefit to it was that Lance Burton, when he finished his show, he would say, but don't leave the hotel because you got to go over to the Houdini Lounge and see Mike Close do a table.
Right.
You'll never see anything like it. So anyway, that's how that worked. I could also do a slightly longer repertoire if I wanted to. I mean, usually when you do tables in a restaurant, you got 10 minutes tops.
Right.
You're doing the magic between the time the order is taken and the appetizers and the salads come out. So it's never a thing. But I could really do a nice set for people. And so that was really good. And I worked out, what was very interesting to me is I had a whole repertoire that I had developed from about 1988 to 1993, I guess, about 5 years, that I worked at a magic-themed restaurant in a suburb of Indianapolis. And none of that repertoire fit the Houdini Lounge. Because if you go to a magic-themed place, there's a certain amount of whimsy and, flavor that's involved there. So and none of that fit working in a casino. So most of the props that I used to work with just didn't make sense. A deck of cards made a lot of sense because cards are everywhere. So I did a lot of card tricks. And so I worked out a whole new repertoire while I was working there. And that was fantastic. And then, of course, when the magic, the people I did magic for, they're gone, back to the piano. I'm off to the races. And the evenings, a 5-hour shift pretty much, usually is a death sentence in terms of trying to keep your enthusiasm up. But when you can bounce back between two things like that, it made the evening go quite quickly.
Right. And also going in there as a customer. When you went in as a customer, you were like, oh, we want to hear, he's playing the piano, but we know he does magic, so we're ready for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone that showed up there had that expectation.
Yeah.
It wasn't, so when you went up to a table, it's not like, what the hell is this asshole doing? We're trying
exactly
to eat,
right.
We're trying to drink.
I'm not saying say
so
that. Mostly they'd say that.
No, they said it on me.
I know that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Exactly. But well, I'll tell you, I really, this has been wonderful, and we haven't even really gotten into some of the other things that I wanted to talk about with, the kind of music that you like to listen to in your own life.
I can talk. I'll talk about that really briefly because you and I'd like to hear your take on this. What I have discovered as I get older is my focus becomes narrower. I find myself not actively seeking out new players and listening to them. I tend to so much enjoy going back to the guys who are really, Errol Gardner and Tatum and Dave and Oscar and Monty, those guys. But, there are the other ones, Benny Green is fantastic. I love, Benny has so many different, not only styles that he plays, kind of that hard bop thing that he does. But when he played with Ray Brown, he played in a different way. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
The tap keyboard was a completely different thing, which I thought was fantastic. But now, I love, what is his name? Emmett Cohen in New York, I think is just an extraordinary player. The fellow who works with Jeff Hamilton, whose name I can't think of right now.
Tamir Handelman.
Tamir Handelman is an extraordinary player. I really love Bill Charlap. Harmonically, what Bill does and the touch that he has it's
funny. I've known Bill for a long time, tangentially, and we've done it. We did some cruises together and stuff. And he really, cares and study. I mean, his touch is ridiculous. And he's just, for me, even more so than some of the other younger guys that came through. Guys came through. They went for. In my mind, they went from, Bill Evans through to Keith Jarrett to that route.
Really?
Bill seems to be almost a throwback to what. Bill Charlap seems to be a throwback to me to what the next iteration of Bill Evans would have been.
Absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
But the funny thing is, we talk about them. He's 60 years old, and I think of him as a young guy.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is our age too. But I do the same.
Who he said was living in Vegas. I don't know if he still is. Is it Ben Patterson?
Oh, Ben was out here for a short time. He's a friend. He's a great player.
Oh, he has a marvelous. His touch on the instrument and his ideas are really clean and really good. And I really enjoy listening to him play. But I do find myself, and then to be honest, I'm also listening to some of the young classical players. I'm a huge fan of Yuzha Wang. I don't know.
Oh yeah, sure.
Who's chopped. I just.
Well, it's so funny. And I'll go off on a little tangent. There was a guy, and I forget his name. But a wonderful writer. He wrote for the Jazz Record in New York for years and years, and he was Paul Bacon, and he also designed a lot of fantastic, like legendary album covers, and he really talented guy. And he wrote the liner notes for one of my CDs years ago for Chiaroscuro, and he said, "I'm constantly astounded at the level of technical proficiency that all these young guys were. Like guys like me have the chops that no one had in the 50s and 40s, just because the advancement of the instrument and stuff. But I see 18-year-old kids like doing Instagram videos from Berkeley that are just mind-numbing. They're blowing away like Makoto Ozone. They're blowing away the hottest technical players that I ever saw, and they're doing it effortlessly at 18. And I think that it's advancing. And you see these guys. Not all of them are doing the best thing with the chops, but classical world is it's exactly the same. It moves up by leaps and bounds. And I mean, but I find myself exactly like you in that respect of, I go back to, it's like, comfort food. I want to hear, I'll
give you two examples.
Okay.
When I want to remember being in high school and being blown away by jazz, I put my copy of Night Train on the Peter Night Train album. And that takes me back to being a senior in high school and not understanding how any of that worked. When I want to be really sad, I put on my copy of You Must Believe in Spring and I'll listen to Bill Evans, and that's my sad day music.
Yeah. And it can move you to tears. I mean, Dave, when I first heard, I mean, this is mildly embarrassing, but what do I care? The first time I heard a version of Danny Boy by Bill Evans, I started sobbing.
Yeah.
Because it was he recorded it right after Scott LaFaro had died.
Really?
And I knew that, and he hadn't touched the piano in a long time. And you can't not be moved by that. Or if you're not moved by that,
there's something.
You're not into music.
Yeah. The one thing that's, that I wonder about that, especially with these young classical players, is, did they have a childhood? And, and that's a difficult, that's something that, my daughter Ava, she's 18 now, and you were around when we adopted her and brought her to Las Vegas. But, I never wanted to lean into her, and she's got a lot of great gifts musically, and you know that. You've seen her.
Sure.
Performing, you know how good she is. But I wonder about these kids, especially, when they grow up in China or these places where a kid who displays talent becomes the escape hatch.
Right.
This is the kid that's going to get us out of this situation.
It becomes a commodity.
What happens is the instrument becomes their job 8 hours a day from a very young age. They're at the instrument with somebody looking over their shoulder. And and certainly if you eliminate a childhood, yes, somebody can be that great at 18 if they've been doing it 8 hours a day for 10 years. You know what I mean? Under supervision. No, not to say that these kids, the couple other piano players. I mean, I'm a big fan of Makoto Ozone.
Sure.
And I think you and I talked about this, but I played with Phil Wilson, the trombone player.
Sure. Yep.
He happened to show up at a Holiday Inn I was playing at with a trio, and he was there for a wedding. So he was there for a weekend, and he had his trombone with him. So he sat in with us one night, and he said, I just got done doing this recording with this young Japanese piano player. Mm-hmm. I got I brought some copies with you. So I bought that Makoto Ozone Phil Wilson album where they do giant steps together.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That thing. But, I'm a huge fan of him. I love Michel Camilo and all these. So I do have a group of guys who are not all dead musicians, guys who are still out doing it. But I do find that my focus gets narrower and narrower.
I think definitely many people that I've talked to have had the same experience. You go back to the things you like, but also the things that you like hold up. You put on Night Train, you know it's going to be good. And
that is one of the hardest swinging albums I have ever heard. There isn't a tune on there that it isn't played perfectly. I mean, it's how does George on My Mind go? Well, you could listen to Ray Charles, but listen to what Oscar did to this.
Yeah.
Just perfect.
And I mean, I go back to that. I mean, I go back to a lot of Oscar, but also, the Montreux Alexander album.
Yeah.
I talk about that all the time, nonstop, because it really, by the time they get to Battle Hymn of the Republic on that album, it'll swing you into bad health. You know what I mean? It's just the deepest groove and the heaviest, and Monty is just on top of it. I mean, just so good.
Yeah.
And there's plenty. I mean, obviously, I don't want to sound like older than I am, but there is amazingly great musicians now that are in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
That I want to hear when they're in their 40s and 50s, because they're producing this stuff. It seems like the bass line has gone up so much farther than it was.
Oh yeah.
When we were coming up 40 years ago. You know what I mean? And I think it's because,
well, one thing that does that is the technological increases. Now, you remember I said that I have really bad ears, and that hasn't changed. But when I was in college, I did transcribe some Peterson solos. Mm-hmm. But in order to do it, I had to go from the record player to my father's reel-to-reel tape recorder, which did 15, 7.5, and whatever happened.
3 3/4. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 3/4. And I transcribed that way. But of course, anybody who ever remembers doing that knows that when you slow it down, it drops an octave and things get really muddy and hard to hear. But now, of course, there's transcription software things that can slow down. I mean, you see it if you watch YouTube, you can slow it down and speed up YouTube, and the pitch doesn't change.
Right.
So we have this technology. There are also a lot more people, since the technology is there, who are transcribing things. I mean, I probably have one of the world's largest collections of Oscar Peterson transcriptions. I mean, from all these different sources. So the material, if I had gone to my, 12-year-old self and said, oh, you want to understand what's going on here? Here it is.
Here you go. Yeah.
I bought, and I don't know how many years after I got the album, but I have the sheet music of the Canadiana Suite. Mm-hmm. Transcribed by this guy who didn't really even come close most of the time. And there are parts left out. The solos aren't there. It's just this basic.
Right.
So it wasn't accurate, and I couldn't learn anything from it because it wasn't accurate. But now there's all sorts of things. The pedagogy, I think, has improved. The way they teach jazz now is much better than they used to teach jazz 40 years ago. They figured out how to do it. So the tools are there in place that will allow someone with an interest, I think, to proceed much faster than they did, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really...
And for those who are still awake, if you'd like to use this podcast as a sleep aid, Mike will be...
That's right. Now we'll tell you. Let's talk about some more inane... anyways, what I wanted to say is I think that everything will be fine with the music side of things. But I don't want to say anything will be fine.
Las Vegas, man, it must be, because you are. You are.
No. What I was trying to say was everything will be fine with the future of jazz and music.
Yeah.
There are enough young musicians out there and people, but still the world's going to blow up, so it doesn't matter. Meanwhile, I think that everyone should watch Fool Us and look for your name at the end.
Yes, I mentioned that. I mean, my main gig right now, not my main gig, but the thing that I've done since 2015 is being the magic consultant on Fool Us. I did it for several years with our dear friend Johnny Thompson, who passed away in 2019, and I've been the sole magic consultant from that point on. It's a really good program. I'm very proud about Fool Us because I believe the entirety of it is the finest presentation of magic that has ever been on television. There's never been a group of people so concerned about making magicians look as good as they can possibly look.
Right.
as that program. The unfortunate thing is that we have not been renewed yet. We did 11. We haven't been renewed for season 12. So this is a corporate thing that's going on, and I hope they do it because I enjoy working with the people on the show, and I know a number of magicians who have really made their career out of their appearance on Fool Us.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too.
So it's been a good thing.
Well, you know, Johnny left us, all aghast when he, she had no right to do that. But he left it in good hands because great. You've really kept his spirit alive with what you do, and he was always the guy that was, wanted the finished product to be a level of professionalism and a level of, a lot of the reason why Fool Us looks good is because of you and because of what he wanted.
We spend an awful lot of time trying to do that. I mean, Johnny's great gift and his great curse was he really felt he was the last arbiter of quality on the face of the earth. And he very difficult time when things were not to the level that he expected. So I'm not quite so hard on myself as he was back then, but he certainly gave us a standard. And for people who don't know, he was also an excellent musician, a member of the harmonic hat back in the 50s, and he knew how to compose, he knew how to arrange.
Oh yeah.
And
I will point this out, that when he had his band in Chicago, his piano player was an 18-year-old Jack DeJohnette.
Oh, that's right. I forgot Jack DeJohnette. That's right. He told me that, and I'd completely forgotten about it. And he also knew who shot Kennedy. So, I mean, he had all these really interesting...
I wish he would have told me.
You talk about Barry.
We didn't talk anything about the Kennedy assassination.
And on our next podcast...
Usually, exactly.
Let me tell you. So can you edit it this way? And he goes, and the guy who shot Kennedy, and now you cut that right off then and go, you like this podcast, come back.
That's
anyway, great talking to you, my friend.
Oh, Mike, thank you so much, Michael. And it's really been great. And we'll have you back if you'll do it again, because there's a lot of shit we didn't talk about.
We haven't even gotten to the part where I reached the Emerald City. So,
I know.
I'm still in Kansas right now.